Shout out to everybody out there on White Street. You already know what it is. Salute everybody.
My guy, what's going on?
Sorry, man. It was like, this is my first Instagram live, by the way. So sorry about the technical difficulties.
Just the only person.
I'm stuck in the Stone Ages. I still have to get a Twitter. I still have to like get on IG. So I'm stuck on Facebook still.
This is wild. You're the only person I know that doesn't know how to operate a fucking Instagram.
Well, I joined in from the laptop, but for some reason it won't let me join it. It looks like I have to join from the mobile phone. What's up, everybody?
Yo. All right. So I'm gonna give kind of. You're gonna be doing most of the talking on this because
I'll be able to ramble, no problem.
Wildly interested in how this story is gonna go. So this is actually it's actually an interesting how this came about. So I'm gonna give like the short backstory into this.
Yeah, let's give about how we could connect in the first place.
Yeah. So originally, even the SteveBussaGS brand. Originally was supposed to be more business oriented. It was supposed to be on more of the marketing side of things as opposed to the hip hop side of things. It just didn't work out that way. So I was actually running a campaign manager for a marketing firm, Gray Square. Shout out to Gray Square. Hit them up for a ton of motivational shit. And every Monday night we would go out for team night. Raj actually owned a hookah bar in the Pennsylvania area. I'm not going to dox my guy. I ended up taking everybody to, and honestly, we had like some of the best nights of our fucking life there. It was a super chill spot, professionally ran, everything about it was dope. So I ended up connecting with Raj on an entrepreneur side of things, where it was like, hey, business owner to business owner, like, yo, let's kick it, let's exchange information, see what happens in the future. We're getting a little bit of a feedback. That sound all right to you?
Yeah, it was good either way. Whatever's cool. Best for your audience.
So that was dope. One thing leads to another. The pandemic happens. Obviously, not going to hookah bars and things of that nature anymore. Raj and
I ended up selling it way before the pandemic hit anyway. So, my life went in different directions after that. We were running the lounge. I ran it just like it was a living room of mine, and everybody that came in, including you, was just a guest in my home. And that's what made it a successful business. I ended up selling it, went in different directions in life, stopped drinking, stopped smoking.
You're jumping ahead. You're jumping ahead. I want to get to all that in a second. In a second. You're jumping ahead. All right? Anyway, super awesome the way that we came together as business owners. So my understanding, I got like the 4-minute version of this. So I'm going to kind of like intro into this. You tell the people what's the best way to get in touch with you in case they're interested, yada, yada, right? So I'll pass it off to you. But so when he hits me up and we go to recap kind of like what's been going on since the pandemic and everything like that. And I get this short version of the story that was something along the lines of my man did psychedelics, had a spiritual experience that was like, yo, it's time to go a different direction in my life. When that happened, when this happened, you kind of like got rid of. You had a successful medical practice you were involved in for physical therapy. I know that, like I said, you had already sold Nirvana, but I know that you had previous business ventures.
Yeah, so I cut down my hours, so I'm still seeing a few patients, but just on a very sparse basis, not like as much as in the past.
Gotcha. So the idea now is that you found your passion through this psychedelic trip. And now your direction has completely changed. And I am so excited to find out the extreme details of this, because I've never done a psychedelic before. The hardest thing that I've ever done was very recently. I tried marijuana edibles. And
we have talked about that.
Right, so that's my ceiling and my basement. That's the only frame of reference that I have going into this, right? I am dying to hear about this. So tell me about, we got puppies here.
Yeah, so, after I had these life-altering experiences, I had realized some different things about my life, and, different ideas became available to me through these experiences, which ended up, bringing me on a different life path. So now, as I shift out of seeing patients, I'm shifting towards more of a career to coach meditation, to coach breath work, basically, I want to help people.
So you're still healing people. It's just a different type of healing.
Right. Yeah. And it's different modalities, different tools. Pretty much my goal in life is to end someone's end suffering, right? Whether it's in myself or
that sounded
others.
morbid as shit for a second there.
Yeah,
Raj out here, angel of death in people.
It's a hell of a mission. Whether it is through medical practice or it's through meditation or just spiritual counseling. You know, the goal in life is to help people, you know, raise their conscious awareness, you know, figure out what their purpose is in life, get more in tune with their spiritual side, with their soul, kind of get more control of their brain patterns itself. You know, you know very well, Steve, that, you know, a lot of us are stuck in depression these days. A lot of us are stuck in anxiety. You know, we're stuck in the loop of our negative thoughts. And a lot of us don't have, you know, we're kind of at the whim of what our brain wants us to do, right? If our brain is upset at something, or, you know, things like anger, frustration, jealousy, you know, a lot of us are walking around, you know, with being the slave of our mind. Whereas
with being what?
What I want to help do is help flip the tables on that. So I want the mind to be a servant of the whim of what we want, rather than the other way around. Rather than your brain telling you, like, Steve, you're going to be depressed today, and then you just kind of go along with it. We want to be able to flip that around, and ways to do that is to become more mindful. You've probably heard, you know, you should be mindful. You know, everybody's talking about mindfulness these days, but that's kind of what I want to help teach. You know, it's very confusing to people. It's very hard for our Western society. And one method, at least one quick method, kind of a shortcut really, to get into that more higher conscious awareness is the use of these psychedelic tools, right?
So
you know, they've been used for thousands of years. You're saying?
Yeah. Let's start here, because like that has such a broad spectrum that it covers, right? So like I want to walk through this first experience with you where you made this decision, but I want to do so with as much detail as you're willing to give.
Absolutely.
All right, so when you say psychedelics, what specifically are you working with? What are you referencing?
Because there's a few different kinds, of course. And of course, there's not only are there different substances with different effects, but also dosage matters as well. So I can get into that as well. So I first started playing with these tools 8 years ago. And I've been, you know, using them just in terms of getting more as a creative tool, right? I use them both. I use them in 3 ways. I use them therapeutically, you know, to conquer inner demons. I've used them recreationally, you know, to watch the funny cartoons on the TV. And I've used them as methods of thought, you know, methods of creative thinking, you know, problem solving. Let's say I have, you know, XYZ problem in front of me, whether it be a business problem, relationship problem, or something I just can't figure out. I would take a substance, think about the problem, journal about it, and the answer generally just comes to me. So that's what people in Silicon Valley these days, a lot of the programmers, a lot of the those computer engineers have been using psychedelics for many decades now. You know, Steve Jobs started the idea of the iPod using LSD. Watson and Crick discovered the double helix of the DNA under the influence of LSD. So lots of amazing scientific discoveries have happened from using these substances as tools of creative thought. But I also think there's a large potential of healing one's inner wounds, inner emotional trauma, healing anxiety, healing depression. And I think all of those things also have its place within these tools. So my tools of choice generally are between, you know, LSD and psilocybin mushroom. So, you know, you've heard the term magic mushrooms, right?
Right.
You know, it's either one or the two. And they're, to the layman, to the beginner, they're both fairly similar experiences. You know, they're both going to expand your mind. They're both going to show you different level of awareness of your environment. But I would say a good analogy to understand the difference between shrooms and LSD is shrooms puts you in the passenger seat of the experience, and LSD puts you in the driver's seat of the experience. So people generally just describe the mushroom experience as a more spiritual thing. They get close with nature. You know, they get an experience of oneness, of unity with their surroundings. That's why people enjoy taking it outside. You know, whereas LSD is you're in the more driver's seat. You're kind of in more functional control of how you think and how the trip kind of goes. So they both have its places. My preference tends to be towards LSD because it's easier to dose, right? Generally, a street dose is about 1 tab. You could be between 70 and 100 micrograms, and then each derivative of that. So let's say I do 2 tabs. They're going to be twice as powerful of an experience. 3 tabs would be 3 times as powerful of an experience. So depending on what I want to accomplish, if I just have a small problem to solve or a big problem to solve, I would adjust the dose accordingly.
Now, between the two of them, to a layman who's never done psychedelics before, mushrooms sound kind of naturey and kind of
more
light,
natural, right? It's more accessible for the beginner, I would say.
right? And then LSD sounds like heroin. LSD
It sounds
to me
more
sounds like
manufactured, right? It sounds
like a
more
hard
manufactured,
drug,
like made in a lab or something like that. Now they're both derived from plant. They're both considered plant medicines. LSD derived more from the ergot root. So they're both derived from plants. Just LSD is a little more refined and purified in a lab setting. But for those of us that are afraid to trying to think that's kind of made by man, I would say try what God gave us. God provides, you know, right outside. You can just pick out a mushroom and eat it that way. So
I do want to talk about this use of God and spirituality and religiousness, because I feel like it's heavily tied into not only the story.
I would say this. How about this? How about Earth provides? Well,
all right. So let's get into this. So prior to the experience, so when you had the experience, you decided to make these changes. Were you on LSD or mushrooms?
LSD.
And what was your dosage? Like how many tabs?
So I've had a few life-changing, like really life-changing experiences. I would say every trip is always a little bit life-altering. You know, you definitely come out of it a better person. But I've had really significant life-changing experiences 4 times, I would say. On those 4 instances, the dosages have been between 300 and 400 micrograms. So generally 3 or 4 tabs.
3 or 4 tabs. Okay. Were you religious prior to this experience?
Regarding the 3 or 4 tab experiences, I would say I was agnostic.
Okay, so you just didn't know.
Yeah,
you know that you don't know.
I was raised a Hindu, became an atheist after, and then for the large chunk of my life, I was agnostic, right? Just from a more scientific, skeptical mindset, you know, looking at it from a pure science lens. And it wasn't until those 3 or 4 tab experiences that I get a divine experience, which I would categorize as a religious experience.
So are you religious now? Or
yeah, I would say I'm much more religious now than I've ever been. And I guess where people get caught up in that is everybody's definition of God is different, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I think for most atheists or agnostics, the definition of God may be like a benevolent God, it may be a personal God, it may be like a man-like God, you know, beard in the sky, castle in the sky type of God. Whereas I would say my definition of God's pretty accessible. It changes all the time, actually. I'm always constantly shifting it. But it's the universe itself. It's the underlying source code of the universe. You know, the algorithm underlying the cosmic is
some deep shit.
God. Yeah. But anyway, I could talk about that too, but that was just a side effect of using it. After taking those experiences, you know, within literally a second, I was able to quit a 10+ year habit of smoking cigarettes within an instant, just like that. And that's where I really piqued my interest as to the potential for therapeutic effects. Now, I took that high dose without the intention of quitting cigarettes, by the way. If I had the intention, it would have been even easier to quit. But I didn't even have the intention. I took the high dose. I was actually looking for the recreational trip. I was going to watch some movies, hang out, relax. And the acid was just like, no, motherfucker, you're going to do some work today. It's like, it pretty much was like, no, it showed me all these things about my life that were negative, and was like, you're fixing these one by one.
You said acid, so LSD is acid?
Yeah.
Just for clarity.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, they're both the same. So I know in the beginning of the trip, I had this pack. You know, my preferred brand was Marlboro, right? And I've used that particular brand for many, many years. You know, it's a brand that I enjoyed. After the experience is a 6-hour experience, no matter what the dose is, right?
Damn, it's 6 hours. Okay,
it's not that bad. I mean,
it's a night. It's a night.
It's a night. It's a night or an afternoon. Yeah, it's worth it, man. But yeah, it's 6 hours. So plan accordingly. You know, plan your day around that. Yeah. But so at the end of the 6 hours, I had realized, like, oh my God, I have not even the slightest urge to try this cigarette. Not even a little bit. And like that was really strange. So I had one left. I went outside to try it. It just I knew I quit. It was like a flip of a switch. And being the guy I am, to celebrate quitting, I was like, let me just have this one last one, you know, finish the box, you know, before I throw it ceremoniously, right? I go to hit it outside, and it tastes like vomit. And I was like, that's really weird. Why does it taste like vomit? It's a few hours ago, it tasted great, you know? And then I tested that again a week later, 3 months later, 6 months later, and 1 year later, I tried a cigarette, and each time it tasted like shit, and I couldn't finish it.
That's interesting.
So something inside of me literally flipped a switch.
So that's not my first time hearing something like this. So my ex actually tried something called Chantix. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
So like the way that works is your brain has certain perceptors, right, that perceive pleasure and like the things that you like and taste and shit like that. And I think the idea is you're still supposed to smoke while doing it because you're training your brain to dislike. Right.
Yeah, so that's more treating the withdrawal stuff. It's taking another approach to it. It's taking a more biological approach to it, saying, okay, the body is getting some nicotine in, let's taper off, you know, slowly and evenly. And it works for a lot of people. This was not like that at all. This was
just instant.
Totally instant. Totally instant. Yes, sir. Yeah.
So like, but like that's not universal, right? It's not like everybody who does LSD doesn't smoke.
No. So I had, you know, I went into this experience with it's very systematic to do it therapeutically. Most people that do it, they'll go out in the forest, they'll watch some funny cartoons on TV, and they won't even get an ounce of therapeutic effect. I'm going into this, so I would do 30 minutes of breath work during the start of it. I would meditate. I would journal. I would set my intentions from the start, and then kind of meet them, kind of doing self-therapy on myself. Like you imagine like a Freudian scene where some guy's sitting on a couch and the psychologist is there with a notebook. I'm doing that with myself.
To yourself.
You're doing this experience. Yeah. Because you get to separate yourself from your inner demons, right? So let's say we all walk around with a lot of inner demons, you know, past traumas and flaws that we don't like about ourselves, or things that, you know, we kind of bury deep in our subconscious. What this does, it bubbles all that to the surface, allows you to face it, accept it.
That sounds terrifying.
Yeah, it's not, and it can be. It definitely can be. But it's like a roller coaster. You know, there's ups and downs, but you come out of it a much better person. So it brings up, it's medicine. You know, it brings up what you need to see, what you need to hear. And it allows you to face those memories and trauma from a viewpoint of safety. And, you know, a lot of times if you bring up past traumatic experiences, you get some physiological response. Your heart rate will go up, you know, you'll start getting tense, you'll start getting anxious. And, you know, it won't be fun to think about those memories. In this sort of state, you know, on the psychedelic state, you can face these memories with ease and comfort and safety. And then you can pretty much dissolve your inner demons in such a way where you'd come out of it. You know, I've had many people tell me a strong psychedelic trip is like 10 years of therapy in a few hours. They've had more success with self-assisted psychedelic sessions than they have in professional therapy.
Here's where my, I guess, pushback will be on this, and where like a good conversation point would be then, right? Because I would suggest that therapy is probably useful for about 90% of people.
Yeah, I agree. I would say 99% of people need therapy.
I would say 90% because I'm going to fall under that 10% of people where it doesn't work for me because I'm not going to take the advice. It doesn't work for me because I'm constantly trying to reverse engineer why someone's telling me something and what the method. You know what I mean? Like I'm more manipulative into it instead of genuinely going in for it. Right?
Yeah.
I can't imagine that anyone would come on here and say everybody should try LSD. Like
never,
okay.
Absolutely not. That's not. I wouldn't advocate for that at all. Actually, that would be no bueno. You know, a lot of people aren't ready for it. This is something to seek out when it's called to you, and it takes many hours and days of research that one needs to do. One needs to do their homework before they're even eligible. There's a lot of yellow flags and red flags of reasons not to take it. If you have history with mental problems, I'm not advocating for anyone doing this. This is illegal, of course. I'm just speaking from hypotheticals today. So I wouldn't recommend anyone take it, or definitely not. And it's something that you need to really think about if you have history of mental illness or you're privy to schizophrenia or anything like that, or manic type symptoms. I would stay away from it. But for everyone else, it's definitely something to at least research about, if not just become more informed about. Even if you don't end up trying it, it's good to know about it, I would say. So
do the research regardless.
It's not just, most people that take this substance, take this medicine, don't get the healing effects. The healing effects actually come afterwards, after the 6 hours is done. That's where you have to reintegrate. So this thing will flash up some lessons. It'll give you some answers, right? And someone commented what the homework then. I'll go into that. I'll go into like what to do to get a really
that's James, by the way. He used to go to the hookah bar with us too.
Oh, hell yeah, man. But anyways, I lost my train of thought. But it was the what was I talking about?
See, this is the downsides of doing psychedelics.
Well, I'm not on any today. So basically,
But when the research prior.
So most people that would take the medicine, it just gives you a glimpse of what's possible. It puts you in a higher state. It may give you some answers, but it's one thing to read. Anybody can read an answer on a piece of paper that says, "Don't smoke, dumbass." You know what I mean? But that's not going to change anything, and that's what the LSD can be like. It can show you things, but it won't necessarily do all the work for you. All the work comes afterwards, and that's where therapy can come into play, professional counseling and things like that, as part of a reintegration process, right? So now we got some answers in the psychedelic session. How are we going to reintegrate that into our life? And that's serious work, and that's where the results come in.
So my worry about this, right? As somebody who, like, if I was a prospect to try this, right? This is what this sounds like to me, and then tell me where I'm wrong, right? So, like, it feels almost impossible for another person to be able to, like, interpret or guide me through my psychedelic trip. Because, like, to me, it sounds like a dream. And you can buy 1,000,000 dream books. And it's like, oh, if you see clouds, it means this. But there's no science behind that, right? Like,
that's
all subjective.
So as a guide, what I would hypothetically do as a guide is to kind of allow you to have your own experience, right? I'm not there telling you different things or literally guiding you towards one idea or another. I'm pretty much there for a safety reason, right? A lot of people can have bad experiences if they take this in an unsafe environment or an unsafe mindset. So I'm pretty much there as both for a physical and psychological safety thing. Like, I'm just your buddy, I'm your friend. I'm here to tell you everything's going to be okay. You're going to be fine in a few hours. I'm here to, get the pizza at the door, so you can just sit back on the couch and relax and have your experience. Generally, that when you do it therapeutically, you're taking it you have blindfolds on, you're laying down on a couch, you have some music on, instrumental music on, and you're just kind of sitting there breathing calmly and working through what you want to work on. It depends what your intention is in the beginning. And that's what people therapeutically.
How many people have you guided through one of these sessions? Ballpark, approximately.
Hypothetically, approximately a few dozen at least. First
A few
timers.
dozen. A few dozen first timers.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say less than 50, but more than 20.
James said, "Me, you, and him are sounding like a date right now." He's not gonna lie.
But it's yeah, you know, before taking, it doesn't have to be psychedelics. Before doing any type of experience, there's two things that always matter, Steve. It's set and setting, right?
I've heard this. I've heard that before.
What is your mindset going into this? If you have if you have a court date tomorrow, I probably wouldn't be doing this. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
The mindset's really important. What your intention is. Are you doing it for pure reasons, right? I'm not here to tell you have to do it therapeutically. I've had some great recreational. I've taken it at concerts, taking it on hikes in the woods, and
I've had experience enhancer.
Yeah. It's just it's a non-specific amplifier. Whatever's in front of you is going to amplify. So it's been great from that reason. But the other thing is setting, right? Your physical environment where you're taking it in. If you're taking it in a shopping mall versus alone in your apartment or with a buddy in your apartment, it's much more safe in that way. You know, being in public is not a good idea.
I talk about that with edibles.
Edibles the same boat. If set and setting matters, you should not be doing that in public if you're not ready for
it. I couldn't imagine. I couldn't even imagine doing it.
It's very heavy. It's not the same as marijuana. People get that mixed up a lot.
I was just talking to somebody about this recently. So like, I don't smoke marijuana, so I don't have the frame of reference for that as far as that goes. But I did drink for a long time, right? So I actually gave up drinking last November or last October, but I look at November 1st is my 1 year, right? So I'm coming up to 1 year, and I don't miss it. I don't miss alcohol or drinking.
Not at all.
That's
a great question. Oh man, alcohol puts you in a lower vibratory state. You were mentioning before your basement is base reality, and your ceiling is the edibles, right? I was going to comment when you said that was actually you've experienced below the basement. You've experienced alcohol.
Right.
So alcohol puts you in a lower vibratory state, as does things like cocaine, meth, heroin. It brings down your conscious awareness, right? When you're drunk on alcohol, you're not aware of things around you. You're not aware of what your effect is on other people. You may it's easy to miss details around you, right? It affects your judgment. It's affecting your thinking. You know, these substances, these medicines don't lay a hand on your thinking. You're still you and you throughout. You just have a new pair of glasses on during the psychedelic experience. Whereas the alcohol affects you as a person, and it puts you in a much lower vibratory state. I would equate psychedelics, you know, and different methods of increasing consciousness like meditation, like yoga, as methods to get to a higher state and increase awareness of what's around you.
Shout out to Sarah. Sarah's in here too. She's been commenting. Sarah said that she tried 2 tabs of acid, and as somebody who has tried 2 tabs, she couldn't even imagine trying 3 or 4 and what that could affect somebody. So,
I can go into that a little bit.
Yeah, my question on this is how does that come about? Is there a tolerance involved? Like you do 2 for a certain amount and then
actually it remind me. I do want to talk about DMT. That's a very fascinating subject, especially these.
I got a couple notes to come back to here.
Thank you, Steak. I appreciate that. So that's where these practices come in. I think meditation is very important before doing psychedelic experiences because it puts you in more control of your brain and your thoughts, right? And if you have more control of your brain and thoughts and feelings and responses to external stimuli, you can go into a psychedelic experience and take out much more of it without getting lost in amazement, right? So if I take 2 tabs and I may, whoa, this is awesome. You know, I'm kind of lost in amazement. I don't know what more I can get if I took 3 or 4, right?
So curiosity.
Yeah, so it can be obviously the more dosage it is, the more intense the experience is. So it takes you need to kind of let go, right? People have bad trips. They kind of try to control the experience. This is about surrender. Let the medicine do its work. Just listen to what the medicine tells you, and then you come out of it better. It's best not to try to control the experience. And generally, when people are doing high doses for the first times, they may want to grab onto some hold of control as their ego dissolves, right? These are ego dissolving medicines. just like meditation is, just like yoga is. Those are all different methods to dissolve the prefrontal cortex's ego. You know what I mean by ego, Steve?
I do.
I'm using Eastern definition, not a Western definition.
Right. I was about to tell you to clarify that for everybody else. So I know what that means because there are YouTube channels that I follow for interest basis that talk about ego death and like the things that happen while on psychedelics, shit like that.
So in the Western world, sorry to interrupt. In the Western world, the definition of ego is like pride, right?
Right.
It's like trophy, you know, things like that. In the Eastern philosophy, ego is anything that's not your witness mind, and I'll define that as well. So ego is your thoughts, feelings, your roles, your identity, your names, your labels. Like you as a content creator, that's a label of your ego, right? It's who you build yourself up to be in the world, you know, including your name, anything, your thoughts, feelings, all of it's ego. And all of it, you know, any form of ego can lead to suffering, right? It's a
Jesus Christ. There's a T-shirt. That's merch. That's on the merch right there.
This is from the Buddha. So what we want to do as part of these practices is distance ourselves from our ego. And what I mean by, well, what are you distancing? If thoughts and feelings is ego, then what's the other part? What are you distancing out, right? And I would say, like, if you have this pen that you're holding here, now, am I this pen, Steve? If I'm holding this pen, I'm not, because I can see it, I can hold it, I can manipulate it in front of me. In the same way, if I hold an apple, you know, I'm not the apple. Now, when you get thoughts in your head and you watch those thoughts, you can judge those thoughts. You can say, oh, that was a good thought, that was a bad thought. Well, who's the one watching the thought? Who is watching the thought? Who is watching the feeling, right? If you can watch your thoughts and feelings, therefore you are not you. You are not those thoughts and feelings. You know what I mean? So that's where we have to create that kind of space. You know what I mean? So
you're separating the consciousness.
Yeah, separating your conscious awareness, your witness mind. You're separating that from your thoughts, feelings itself. And that's just a good spiritual practice, just to relieve anxiety, depression, worry, frustration, anger, is to separate yourself from those emotions and not so much engage with them as much. But what these medicines do is they neurochemically dissolve the ego for you, right? And as that kind of dissolves over the 6 hours, some people may try to grab onto them. That's where they can get a bad trip. So it's good, especially on higher doses, as per that viewer's question, is to kind of let go and I'll just allow, and then allow the medicine to tell you what it wants to tell you. And as part of that allowance, your ego goes away. You don't become Steve anymore. You're just pure energy.
And is this the same thing on LSD as it is with mushrooms?
Yes.
Same experience overall.
Same ego death. Ego death can be more powerful depending on the dosages, but generally they both will get you there, particularly at the higher doses.
So what determines for you what to recommend to somebody between the two of them? If I come to you and I'm like, hey, I'm looking for a psychedelic experience, what's the difference between you handing somebody a tab and handing somebody a mushroom?
Depends what the overall intention of the user is. I do think that they both can give you very therapeutic experiences, and they both can give you very recreational experiences. From a safety standpoint, I do think dosing is easier on the tabs than it is for the mushroom. But you know, they both are kind of weighed on a scale and then done.
Gotcha. Here's an interesting question. So when it comes to edibles, because this is, again, I'm going to use this continuously as my frame of reference, right? There are instances where you'll get an edible and you'll eat a fucking brick of cereal, right? This fucking big. And you'll eat the whole thing and you'll be like, you know what? I didn't have any kind of an experience. It didn't work. You know what I'm saying? Like nothing happened. Does that exist? Is there a time where you take a tab of acid or you eat a mushroom and it's like a dud, like nothing happens? Does that happen?
That's a great question. I have heard that experience happening, particularly on marijuana and on edibles. whereas the shit just doesn't work, you know? I haven't heard of anything in my reading I've done of somebody doing a psychedelic and not getting an effect from it.
You've never had somebody lay on the couch and they're just like, what the fuck, bro?
unless it's obviously a fake thing you got on the street somewhere, right?
No. I'm talking about legit.
I don't think that's very likely. Although there is a fun story of this guru in India that had taken 12 of these tabs and not get any effect at all, and the reason for that being is that the monk was already in that heightened state of awareness already through his practice of meditation, because meditation psychedelics is the same shit. One is just a shortcut, and they're both part of the same sidewalk of experiences. So the monk that took it, he probably didn't get much of an effect because he was already there.
Now, do you believe in things like that, or is that more like folklore?
No. That's for real. That's for real. If you're already in Detroit, you don't need to take a train to get there.
Let's go with this. Let's go. Ron's dropping bars for y'all. Let's see. Kim says
that's crazy. So someone just commented that they did shrooms and felt nothing at all. That's kind of wild. Must have been some not a great batch, I guess.
She was literally just eating like regular mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms.
These are pretty powerful experiences. Now, what I was saying before is that a lot of these substances have been used ceremoniously, as part of different faiths from around the world, as part of rites of passage experiences from child to adulthood, or just religious experiences. Actually, some research I have here says that 78% of users experienced their psychedelic experience as one of the greatest experiences of their entire life, in the top 5. And that's the same list as having their first child.
Wow. So you said that and there's research of them giving kids, like people of all ages, attempting to try this?
No. The study said that users reported their psychedelic experiences the top 5 of the greatest experiences they've had in their life, most meaningful experiences they've had in their life, including on that same list of experiences is
having a kid
or getting married. Yeah.
What's the age bracket? What's the age bracket you're looking at? Like someone's like, hey, I want to try LSD. Is there a limit where it's like, hey, you're too old, bro. Like, I'm not having some 70-year-old dude die on my couch. Like, is that a real thing? Or is it like, hey, you're too young. Why don't you go live life?
That would need to be cleared by a doctor, probably. That would probably need to be cleared by a doctor. I would imagine that you should wait till you're in full adulthood and your full brain is formed before trying anything.
Before fucking with it?
Like this, like with any other substance, right?
Okay. So,
I mean, for those of us, you're asking a lot of questions. For those of us that are not comfortable with jumping into an experience like this, there are ways to get there without the substance, right? Much more safer ways with less risk involved, less side effects involved. Obviously, more legal ways to enjoy some of the same benefits, right? And I can speak about those today. One of those being flotation tanks. You ever heard of float tanks, Steve?
I have. And then the sensory deprivation
tanks. Yeah, I think that is. I think if you have a positive experience in a sensory deprivation tank, you are now eligible for a full psychedelic experience. And I think that if the flotation experience was no bueno for you, I think one needs to work with that first.
What if it? But see, for me, what if it's fucking claustrophobia? Like, what if it has nothing to do with the experience, and I just don't like the idea of being in a closed-off casket of water? Like, would you still say that psychedelic's not for that person?
Well, you can just close your eyes in the tank and pretend you're not in the
Thanks,
tank.
asshole.
You know, that's
just close your eyes.
Yeah.
What a pitch.
I mean, it works. I mean, if claustrophobia is generally a fear that you have that's preventing you from enjoying the float tank, that's kind of, I would say the float tanks are the closest thing you have to a real psychedelic experience without any substance. It's very safe for most people.
You're still you're in PA, right?
Yeah, I'm in Jersey right now, but I go to and from. I'm pretty much on the border.
Is there any place to do any type
Yeah,
of isolation
I
tanks and
have.
shit like
Yeah,
that?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a few in Hamilton that I've been to. I'm actually looking to get a float tank for my home. Um,
Let's
I'm
fucking
really
go, Raj.
Yeah, well, I know the isolation tanks are pretty crazy. I mean, I think it's going to be pretty society changing technology because I think it's going to raise the collective consciousness of everybody
Do you
having
think
these experiences.
right now it seems like marijuana is probably going to be legalized
Yeah,
around the
yeah,
world, right? Like you would
yeah,
you would bet all your money on that right now?
yeah.
Same. How long after that until we start exploring, you know what I'm saying,
Well,
psychedelics or
a few cities have already decriminalized and or legalized psychedelics, particularly psilocybin mushrooms. I know in Denver you can just pick them out of the ground and eat it, and a cop won't bother you. It's been decriminalized. I'm pretty sure in a few cities already, and I think we're going to start seeing more of that in the next coming decades. The thing about this is just like flying a plane. You know, before hopping on a plane, you need to get a license first, right? You need,
right.
and I think what should happen as these things get legalized and allowed in society, I think people need to take a class. I think people need to get kind of their pilot's license before jumping into these
Gotcha.
experiences. And that would just increase safety for everybody as well. Because I do think they have their place. I do think they can be extremely therapeutic, and especially if they're done with a professional guide. But they shouldn't be done without taking those precautions at first.
So you told me in our conversation that you feel like you found your following or your calling, right? Like where it's like, hey, I know that like what wasn't making me feel completely fulfilled previously in my life. You said like I feel like you know like what
Yeah,
is,
yeah. So
what
again,
is
it's
me,
all
right?
about whether I'm at. It doesn't matter what I've done in terms of business and career wise. Whether I'm treating patients at the clinic or giving people a good time at the lounge. You know, the goal has always been
That
to give
sounded
people.
wild.
You know, the goal has always been to
Pause.
reduce people's suffering, right? Whether I'm
Right.
trying to give them a good time, get their mind off things, or get them in better physical health. You know, I want to reduce people's suffering, and where my career is going in terms of being a meditation teacher, a breathwork instructor. All of these are tools to help people feel better with more joy and more purpose. Um, Psychedelics being no different. So part of my career is going to be kind of advocating for the safety and the use and kind of information on how.
So is there anything contradictory about it? Like when you do physical therapy, there's sports science behind that. It says like, hey, this is how joints heal and move, and like that's proven scientific method. This is what works versus what doesn't work when you see these injuries. A lot of the psychedelic healing and stuff like that, at least at this point, has to be considered speculation, right? Like a lot of it is
Well,
it's not controlled, right? Like,
it's
it's not
based on
controlled.
traditional psychology. So the science of psychology, the science of psychiatry, science of counseling, and that kind of interaction between therapist and patient is the same science that's being used in psychedelic
Is that
session.
science?
Yeah,
I'm genuinely asking. Like science to
I
me
would
is
say
if
so.
you
I
take
would say psychology is a pretty. It's not like a liberal artsy fartsy science like gender studies. I would say psychology is pretty well rooted in scientific because there's definitely a way and a how on how to perform psychiatry and psychology. And I think that when people see their therapist for like, let's say depression counseling or anxiety counseling, the psychedelic session can be more akin to that. And when the psychedelics right now, there's plenty of research being done at Johns Hopkins University on the use of these substances for therapeutic effects to end PTSD. You know, they've had amazing success with PTSD, amazing success with depression, amazing success with um, depression, and people that get cancer and they can't deal with the thought of dying. You know, this is very helpful for people like that to get through that type of emotional trauma. we're going to start seeing more of those type studies pop out. But these studies are conducted in a very rigorous way, where there's lots of pre-testing, lots of post-testing.
I don't know. I'm not sold on it, to be honest with you. I look at
What part exactly?
On therapy and psychology being considered science. That's my. Let me talk. So like this, my crux on that. I look at that the same way that I look at astrology, right?
Ew, no.
Listen. This is my hot take.
Go ahead.
So you know where I'm coming from with this, right? If there are 100 people, and I say, and they're all Tauruses, all right, and I say Tauruses are usually happy in the morning, right? I might get 70 people out of 100 to be like, oh, you know what? I am happy in the morning. Maybe that's because I'm a Taurus. Exactly. Now, the same thing. If I take 100 people who got fucking punched in their face by their dad as a kid, and I'm like, hey, if you were punched in your face as a dad as a kid, there's a chance that you might have picked up some abusive tendencies in your own relationships. There's probably going to be 70 people there that's like, yeah, you know what? I do beat my wife because my dad beat me. That makes sense. Like, there's still not science. Like, science to me is like if you break your bone, if your bone cracks like this, and I plaster it back like this, you will then be able to walk. That is science. It's provable. There's a concrete beginning and a concrete end that is verifiable.
My response to that is I highly disagree with you there. And it's a science because, you know, if that past trauma, let's say my dad was beating me as a kid, if that past trauma is acting as a barrier in my current functioning today, whether it's like getting in the way of my work life, getting in the way of my interpersonal relationships, whether it's causing some anxiety, some depression, some PTSD about it. If I'm subjectively having all those negative experiences, right? So subjectively, I'm feeling like a piece of shit because of my past, right? So that's scientific in terms of I'm acknowledging I'm having these negative experiences.
Okay.
And you, let's say you can play therapist and you can say, okay, objectively speaking, you are reporting that you are feeling on a scale of 1 to 10 towards a 1. You know what I mean? So that's an objective measure. And then subjectively, I can say like, oh, I feel like a 1 out of 10. You know what I mean? Because of X, Y, and Z, because of my past, yada, yada, yada. And the science with that is, okay, let's get me to talk about it and face my experience in order to get me to digest and heal it. And it's here's why that's the science.
Here's why that's not science to me. Because the reaction that's going to come from that is completely uncontrollable. You have no idea. Anything could happen. That person could awaken some shit and go on a murder spree. That person could finally face it and be healed and never think about it again. Like, it's like, I don't know. It seems very wild and unpredictable, and I don't feel like.
Well, how is it different? How is that different from you getting a cold and going to a doctor? Let's say one doctor may botch and mess up your lung, and the other doctor may give you medicine and send you on your merry way. You know what I mean? It's the same thing.
So I'm not going to argue that malpractice doesn't exist because that would be dumb. But I will say that in the event of...
There's times where counseling doesn't work, right? Like, let's say, well, I'm not able to get to the root cause of my issue with you as a therapist, and we weren't able to get to a place of healing. Then either you were a bad therapist or I was a bad patient, or it's just not going to work.
Well, see, that's the thing. I could be a bad patient.
You might not be ready to heal at this time. It might be for another time.
I agree with that, but I feel like if it was science, that wouldn't matter. That in my brain, the way that my brain works, right? I could, Raj, if I don't care about telling you my symptoms, yada yada yada, if I have the flu or whatever it is, right? And I go, and it doesn't matter how not ready to be healed I am. If I get the medicine that heals that and I take it, I get cured no matter what fucking mood I'm in. That's how science works.
Not necessarily. If you don't believe the medicine works, it probably won't work as well.
You're out of your fucking mind. You'll never convince me of that. It's
called the nocebo effect. So if I give you a pain pill, that definitely let's not use pain. Let's say a cold medicine. That's definitely going to work. 100%. It works on everybody, right? Hypothetically. And you sit there as a patient and say, this is not going to work, this is going to make me worse, and I give you this medicine, it may make you worse. It's a nocebo effect. It's the opposite of a placebo effect. A placebo
I get it. I give
you a fake pill and say this is going to work, and you take it and you feel better.
If I have a fucking stuffy nose, right, and I'm having allergies, and I take Claritin or something that clears up your sinuses, it doesn't matter how piss poor of an attitude I'm not feel. If I can breathe out of my nose afterwards, do you understand what I'm saying? Like that's
it's going
science.
to work less. It's going to work less if you have that negative attitude. It may work. It will work less. Belief matters. It's set and setting. Intention matters. But anyway, we went off on a tangent anyway.
Yeah. It's back to talking about this.
We're talking about psychology and
right.
While
we're on the argumentative side, though, I do have a note here, right? So you said there were a lot of creations that came to be while the creators were on LSD. You mentioned, the iPhone, things of that nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think do you subscribe to the idea that that's because they were on LSD, or do you think like the iPhone would have came anyway? It just so happens that it was thought up while it was on this. Like, it's weird to claim as like Steve Jobs came up with this because of this. Like, no, that just so happens.
Well, it's like this. I would say it's like this. So let's say there's a poster in front of me, and it's very far away. I can't read it because it's far away. My eyes aren't that good. I can't read the damn thing. And now you give me a pair of glasses, and I can suddenly read it. Was I going to read it without the glasses? Maybe. Maybe not. But I can say for sure that when you gave me those glasses, I can read the sign.
Gotcha.
And that's kind of how it was. Now, you're not getting the ideas of inventions from the drug itself. The drug itself is only increasing your awareness of your environment. So that's what the effect is, right? We talk about the effect is all it's doing is showing you in more detail what's already there. It's a non-specific amplifier. And by increasing my awareness of my surroundings, that may allow me to get more ideas.
Right. I got you. No, I like that. I'm on board with that.
There, one can come up with different ideas, let's say, for inventions or conquering their inner problems and things like that. So it's
enhancing a focus that's already there.
If you gave a child, like a toddler, a pen, they may get some amazement out of it, right? For a few minutes, they're staring at it, they're playing with it. Now, when you give an adult a pen, they don't have that amazement about it. It's kind of like, jaded, right? It's like, it's just a pen, right?
That's how I feel about relationships.
What the psychedelics do is they give you a childlike wonder on everything around you. So it's like if you swap eyeballs with a child, and you can now see the world with that newfound curiosity and that newfound wonder. And then from there, you could then take those eyes to see that you see the world with that childlike wonder, and then flip them backwards and look at your inner space and face your own inner problems with a new childlike wonder.
I appreciate the analogy, but that is creepy to imagine. The visuals on that were a little intense, my guy.
It's no different than just. That's what's one way to put it. It's to just kind of. It's like just like how you press the reset button on your PS4, man. It's just like pressing the reset button on your habits of thought, on your habits of feeling.
This is an intense comment we just got. Sarah says she had somebody step out of a poster, grab her microphone, and sing every word of Pretty Hate Machine to her in her bedroom. Top 10 moments of my life. It was like it really happened. Jesus Christ, Sarah. Do less drugs. Whatever the fucking dosage is that's causing that. That sounds like too much LSD. You wanted to talk on DMT. What are your thoughts on DMT?
So DMT is one of the most powerful psychedelics known to man. It's its own category, right? It's way more powerful than anything we've talked about in today's talk. That has room for therapeutic potentiality with the ayahuasca experience. You've heard of ayahuasca, going to Peru and coming out as new people. So I think that it's very ceremonial. It's very, structured experience. That's DMT, but it's basically structured in a, it's brewed in a tea, so it lasts, you know, many, many hours. Whereas DMT by itself may last between 7 and 15 minutes. Could be 10 minutes.
How expensive is all of this?
Not very expensive at all. I would say a standard dose of, let's say, a tab could be like $10 for a life-changing experience.
Wow. How much for like a trip sitter?
Usually people just use their buddies. I don't know if people pay for trip sitters, although that is something I'm looking into right now, to become a trip sitter that people can hire. So let's say you hypothetically would take a substance over the internet, and I could either come to you and guide you through the experience, or we could do what we're doing now over like a Zoom call or a video conference, and I could guide you through the experience, and then do post-integration work with you afterwards.
That sounds like a night. What do? You go to somebody's house, they set this all up, and then they fucking they overdose while you're there.
Someone in the comments was asking about what work that can be done to make it a more therapeutic experience. I would say probably journaling, doing meditation, doing breath work, sitting outside, doing calming activities that kind of stimulate healing. That's kind of the goal here. We're not necessarily going to do wild, wacky stuff. We're just kind of just hang out on the couch and just kind of sit and breathe through the experience. Let's listen to some therapeutic music.
We're at the hour mark already, good friend.
Yeah.
Did you have more you wanted to talk about, or were you good?
No, we should probably save it for another time, but that was really good.
Cool. I want to thank you for coming, spending time with me. We got 10 seconds before this clicks out of me. It's going to end automatically on us.
Yeah, so you guys can find me at Raj Padalia on Facebook. I am going to start using my IG a bit more. I haven't used it in a few years.